What's up? It's your boy Karceno here, and you're gonna get, for the first time ever, the most extensive movie review of Star Wars from episode 4 to episode 3. And if you're a Star Wars fan, you know exactly what that means. Now, to start everything off, you're going to hear things that you probably never heard before, and I can guarantee it because it's going to be coming from first person's point of view, my point of view. Okay, no one tell you my point of view better than me, meaning that I can tell you what it was like in all 6 movies. I can tell you the atmosphere, I can tell you what went on, everything. Now first, in 1976, I believe, or 75, one of those years, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but when they were coming up with the idea for Star Wars, and George Lucas had his script and got his permission to make the film, and he was going into all his progressions to make this film. It was a double casting at the time, so it was 1975, and they were going into the casting of this film. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is the people that you see in one place, another person definitely was the person chosen for the role, and how close it was. Brian De Palma, from The Godfather and everything else, he directed Carrie. A lot of people think Stephen King directed Carrie. He's the writer of the story of Carrie. But Brian De Palma actually wrote the movie. He directed the movie. And the fact that other roles were made and created for other people, they weren't in place. Now, the reason why the movie Carrie is important for Star Wars is that back then, if you were smaller and didn't have a lot of film to do a casting, they had dual castings where anybody you select, basically whatever's left, we'll take and put them in our movie. So they both have 2 scripts and they can read for both films. So it's not like Star Wars was the choice film. Carrie was. And because Carrie was the star film, whatever they chose to go with, no matter what George Lucas felt, he had to deal with what was left over. So going into the actual scenes, everything started to change because they liked John Travolta as Han Solo. But it didn't matter what George Lucas thought. He had to deal with what was left over. And Princess Leia was going to be played by Nancy Allen or Amy Irving. And what happened was Nancy Allen, she was going to get the role of, she read for the role of actually Carrie. And I think Sissy Spacek wanted to audition for it. Her husband was a producer, and then that happened. So when they came around and decided that they were going to change the roles, and Sissy Spacek was going to get it, and it was based on she became the person they wanted to be, then Star Wars could start casting its characters. And what was left over is what we got. We got Harrison Ford out of it because he thought he was going to get the role. Everybody from Star Wars cast, like the majority of them came from this casting. Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher. The main three. Now, going to see this movie, you gotta imagine the movie theaters in 1977. And yes, I'm that old. Now, in 1977, these movies were entirely different. The theaters were not as big. I mean, they were big, but not as far as like extravagant. There's lights outside. Everybody was lined up around the corner to go see Star Wars. You had to wait in line, and they were trying to get in as many people as possible for each show. Now, everyone thought at that time the biggest movie that was going to be out was Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown was the biggest thing on the screen back then. So, naturally, Charlie Brown would have been everybody's selection. So, Star Wars became an instant hit because of the reviews it got. Back then, television had like maybe 3 channels. So when you got something that appeared on television, it looked like it did with the visual effects, the buzz was a lot different. The movies back then cost a whopping $2.50. And sometimes you might get a double feature for that price. So for Star Wars to take home the money it did at the time, it's a little different. You know, people weren't as dressed up, not here. Most of the people didn't even have the merchandise or like any of the Star Wars apparel and stuff like that. People were like make a costume or something and wear something outside like they were Star Wars. But this was mostly after the premiere of the movie. I think my mother took me to see it because I think she remembers it more than I do because I was so young. I remember more of what was happening around me than actually the movie. So let me go into the movie review of it now that I've seen it probably a million times. From the very start of the movie, you have a film that, for most part of the reason, this film embodied the struggle of a rebellion against a powerful empire, which you see a lot. But what was important was that the story was constructed not really about the boy, which we assumed. It was more about the tragedy of Darth Vader. All of this was surrounded by him. But going into this film, Star Wars A New Hope, was all about basically Luke Skywalker. The story was written around and about him. The characters and costumes were very interesting. The sounds. This is the first movie ever where the sound effects became the co-stars. Every little sound they made, R2D2 sound, the Jawas, Sand People, every little sound, the sound of the lightsaber, the sound of the X-Wing fighters, everything. This is the first movie probably in history where the sound became almost as big as the film. The soundtrack, George Williams' soundtrack for the movie, excellent. Now, because of budget, a lot of scenes were, I say they could have probably left behind, but what doesn't get credited a lot is the acting for these roles. Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill pulled off a great performance as Luke Skywalker, but the man who stole the show, who really the movie gravitated around, a character that was so flawed, Han Solo, he became the one that everyone identified with in watching this film, because Han Solo was like the average American. He didn't believe in this garbage. He didn't believe in what he could see, what he could touch, period. If it's not real, he can't touch it, it doesn't exist. And he was an a-hole. And people related to it. Americans related to him. And I thought Mark Hamill did a great job as Luke Skywalker, because watching Mark Hamill over the years, he's a very complicated person when he plays characters. He plays characters of different range. He's the Joker's voice. So to see him play Luke Skywalker, he was like a boy wonder. If you look at Luke Skywalker in Star Wars A New Hope, his eyes is full of wonder, joy, just excitement and confusion. Everything you get to see in him through his eyes, you could follow it. The looks on his face, he's in every scene. Now, Carrie Fisher played a Carrie Fisher, an overprivileged, spoiled princess who is the leader of the symbol of the rebellion. You know, so when Princess Leia is there, she acts accordingly. She acts like a snobby princess. And this is somebody who fights for a serious cause. You can tell she grew up in royalty. See, and this is what most of the films forget today, that Star Wars do. You have to embody your characters and what they are. Most people don't do that when they film. They just go ahead and just, like, I'm just going to act the role without being the actual characters. And Alex Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi, well, he played a great part as Obi-Wan as he was teaching him, but I kind of felt like the story was rushed with the part of just getting Luke to go with him, and yo, it's your father's, yeah, come on, let's go. I'm like, my goodness, he just met this guy, old Ben, and like he's been knowing him for a while, but they ain't really that close. Next thing you know, he's giving him a lightsaber saying, I need you to come with me to save the princess. But other than that, man, I mean, Star Wars A New Hope definitely deserved every Academy Award it got. It was clearly the best film. And it's one of those films where Lucas got lucky. He was able to expand the minds of human beings. And because of it, I don't know. I think he kind of got in his own way. And from that point of view, once the film was over, people was cheering. We had the Chicago, what they call downtown popcorn, where you got caramel, butter, and cheese popcorn all together in 3 separate compartments. They call it downtown popcorn. And that's the best popcorn you can get in the world. So, and I didn't know it was such a treasure here. Like, everybody, people come in, like, I need some of that Chicago popcorn. I'm like, what? Don't they have this, like, everywhere else around the world? But it became a phenomenon, and because it became of such a phenomenon, it just started, it became like the big signature thing to go down there to get that popcorn. But that is the first Star Wars, A New Hope. And we go into Empire. Well, let's go into Empire. Going to see this film was like the biggest thing ever, because my uncle was heavy into sci-fi because of Star Wars. Everyone was waiting for this film to come out. You had to get tickets, and when you got the tickets, you had to hope you got there in time. And it came out on a Friday, and everybody had to work, and you had to wait till people came home from work. My uncle was not one of those type of people. My uncle he had to go right then and there as soon as it came out and hit that noon show. And noon shows back then were, that's when movies started. Forget that 11 a.m. stuff. No, it was noon. So you had to get there for that noon show. So my uncle had to get me down there quick, because he wanted to get there and get a good seat and everything. So as we're getting down there, it's packed. Now you're seeing more memorabilia and people dressed up as stormtroopers and Darth Vader masks. I'm like, wow, where did they get that? So now it's action figures, it's merchandise, it's all these different things for the movie. You got a C-3PO, you got an R2-D2, you got shirts, you got everything. So this is the first time I've ever seen anything like this. And we're all having fun with it. And the kids are all playing and running around. Star Wars! People got blasters and, well, what they thought was blasters. Now, going into this film, George Lucas, for whatever the reason was, for this film, decided that a new director would be taking over and he can just focus more on just the writing. Irving Kershner. Adding him as a director for the Empire was very key. And the reason why it was key is because it was so necessary to go to the next level. George was more focused on writing and and creating something new, that he didn't want to take on the stress of directing this film. But if he was going to turn it over to someone with more experience than himself, he wanted someone with at least his vision. And Aaron Karceno knew, and they both were dreamers. Like, George Lucas is a dreamer. And a lot of people felt that George Lucas, going into this, should have directed it again. And this is the big surprise about Empire, which is probably top 5 best movie of all time. Now, here's the surprise about the movie. It wasn't that well received when it first happened, because people couldn't grasp, like it didn't make sense. They had never seen a movie so dark, but they loved it. And it didn't end the way they thought they would get an ending. And the knock on it was, Empire just didn't have an ending. So people left the theaters confused, and they were when the movie was over, people were just in shock as to what they just saw. Now, let me review the film before we go to that part, because I'm getting ahead of myself. The film starts off where the Empire are hunting down the rebellion once again, but now they're aware of Luke Skywalker. And what made Empire so great was the vast scopes and scales of the sets. And this is no CGI at the time. I mean, you start off first off with the Empire and the Imperials, and you can see the vast when they're in the ships and all the soldiers, everybody is in command, and you feel right away Vader's in charge. This is Vader's show. He doesn't have to answer to someone. He's not a minion. He is the one that's running this ship. You know, like, Vader is the head of everything. He's in charge, and he's the one driving. He's the driving force and energy behind his whole mission. Then you see Hoth, the ice, the snow everywhere, the AT-ATs. So the scenes at Hoth, Hoth became one scene of a movie. You had all these different scales that made it just like incredible at the time. Like, normally a sci-fi movie happens in 2-3 places. It's in space, it's here, and it's that. The scope had never been seen before. You're on the planet Hoth with all this snow everywhere, and you got all these machines that's walking. Then they go from there, then you go to the Dagobah system and the swamp land, how that looked, the scale of that. Then you go from that to Cloud City. 3 major scales were done in this movie that were just unbelievable. Now, going to the performances, they were going to be different with a new director. Like, Aaron Karceno got along perfectly with Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford and him bonded immediately. And the reason why they bonded so well is because he understood what his character was, because he had to work with them individually, because for this film, it was going to be a lot darker, and he wanted to make sure that the characters embraced it a lot. Now, Carrie, he left alone because she's more of an instinctive, like, actor. She used her intuition a lot to make decisions, and that's her acting style. She hadn't really worked in too much of anything. but her family was famous. So when your family's famous, you get a lot of push to the top, no matter what you've been in. And she really didn't have to work. But for her, he just wanted her to work on her, with her instincts. His main characters that he really wanted to have down was Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, because that's where the connection was going to really have to be made with those two characters. Harrison Ford, because the people have to gravitate to this guy who's a rebel, and he didn't want to make another Star Wars movie. He wanted to make its own film, to make it more of a fairy tale movie than just a comic book movie. And the problem was, a lot of the times, is that when you're going into something of this scale, you got to try to get the best out of your actors. And luckily for him, the actors were a lot better than he assumed, because they really didn't have a lot of work. Mark Hamill had a lot of some theater work, and he was so shocked at the way Mark Hamill was able to pick up a lot of the scenes, and the acting was like, wow. It was like night and day to him. It's going from Luke Skywalker, because it was tough scenes physically for him, and then as an actor in the Dagobah system, that was a very hard scenes for them to shoot with Luke Skywalker, as far as the acting and interacting with the puppets and all the things happening on the side of you at the same time. You got to stay focused. So those were tough scenes for them to shoot. And Luke pulled it off, and it was a credit to him more than anything. Now, going into the actual story, it couldn't be no more perfect as far as a sequel living up to its own movie. The whole movie is starting off pretty dark. They have to flee Hoth because they have been caught by the Empire. Luke has got to go and complete his training for Jedi training. So he has to break off to go train to become a Jedi. Now, we don't know what that's going to look like. For the first time, we hear Yoda's this trainer, and this guy is going to train him in the Force, and the guy that told Obi-Wan. So now we're interested to find out who is Yoda. And who's this Jedi Master that's going to teach him, and who's going to fight Darth Vader? We know what Darth Vader does. We know he has this red lightsaber that cuts people, and Luke has one, and eventually they're going to meet up. So we're confused, but we're interested at the same time. We know what Han Solo is, and he plays his Road to Perfection. And this, because we kind of thought Luke Skywalker was going to end up with Princess Leia. This is the way the movies normally work. The other guy, Han Solo, just being the sidekick of of Luke Skywalker, while Luke gets the girl. He's the star gets the girl. But the star was Han Solo. Even though he's in the co-starring role, it's Han's movie. And the Millennium Falcon became a character in the film. And that's what another thing that became such a big shock. Them chasing this ship through space. It became so big and monumental to see this ship do all the angles, the spins, everything, that everybody's like, man, this ship is something else. So it came off the page. It became its own identity. So when you saw the Millennium Falcon, your imagination was crazy. You knew as a kid, you're like, man, I gotta have that toy. So after they get the toy, at the Millennium Falcon, and everything's going great. Now you meet a character that's not only great casting work, but it's also the right guy for the character. Billy D. Williams at that time was one of the hottest actors in the world, and especially for black exploitative films like Lady Singing the Blues. He could do drama, he could do serious, and the women thought he was the finest thing ever. Now you got every black woman in America going to see Star Wars because they want to see Billy D. Williams. He's got the look, he's got the hair, but he was Lando Calrissian. He fit that character to perfection. They needed somebody who was smooth, sly, romancing the lady. That's all was up his alley. Being lovable, having character, but Lando became a character that was very important in the Star Wars franchise, and he had his own identity in the film. Even in the short times and the pieces that he was in there, Lando, you got to see his struggle, his idea, his dream being taken away now by the Empire. You got to see how he was betrayed and how the betrayal was becoming worse and worse and worse. By him being a con man, a con man knows when they're being conned. And he knew right away that this deal is going bad and it's not going to be a deal. So he knew that right away before he made the decision, well, I'm finna cross the Empire, because the Empire had already crossed him in the film. So now you get to see the scope of the arguing and the what they call the sexual frustration between Harrison Ford and Princess Leia, who are both in denial. And he's basically trying to get her to admit that she cares about him. And this happens from the beginning of the film all the way on the ship till they have the one scene where they actually kiss in the one room, because it was like that's what she needed to break her mold down. But it's like once they go all the way to Cloud City and everything else, she just confides her love and everything to Han Solo. And the world's most famous line is when she says, "I love you," and he says, "I know." Because it's not in the script. It's not in the script at all. And all Han Solo was supposed to say, "I love you too." And Erwin Kershner, the man who says, that just don't go right. That just doesn't fit. Let's keep going and trying other things. So they did a lot of different stuff. And Harrison came up with, when she said it this time, and Harrison says, "I know." It's a wrap. Cut. It's the end of the film. It was done. That was the last scene shot. The movie was a wrap. They knew it. And George Lucas didn't like it. When they came up with that role, it was like, hey, what's going on here? Oh, yeah, we decided to do this because it just didn't fit. He's a rebel. He's a scoundrel, you know. Why would we put this in here for him? Well, I don't like it. So he wasn't too happy about it, and he was like, well, they did a first screening of the movie, and everybody loved that scene the most out of the entire movie. It's like, I love that line. So George Lucas said, okay, no second screening needed. The movie's good to go as is. Now, this movie was great for its quotes and the two best lines in movie history. No, I'm your father. Because everyone thought that in the script it says that, but Lucas says he knew that Darth Vader was the father of Luke Skywalker all along. But if you look at the script, it didn't say that. It had Obi-Wan as your father, which wouldn't have made sense, you know. He's a deadbeat dad, you know, and just comes poking around. Like, I left you with your Uncle Owen, them, because I was out here just being a hermit. But this made more sense. And George Lucas, and I believe him, said it was the plan all along. He didn't want anybody to know that Darth Vader was really the father. Anyway, works to perfection. So, Empire, I mean, you saw Luke use his hand. His hand gets cut off in a battle with Vader. And Vader, at this time, you get to see him really in action with a young, like, we, in the first film, we really didn't get to see a fight like we thought we were going to get when we saw, like, Luke and Darth Vader. I mean, when we saw Obi-Wan and Darth Vader go at it with the lightsabers. This time we got a young guy who's inexperienced in there with someone who knows what they're doing. And you got that without even, you got that impression without even seeing Vader do much. You knew it was a young guy going up against a master of the Force. And a supreme Jedi or Sith. He knew exactly what was happening at all times. Like, the experience. He felt them out in the beginning to see how good he was, and thought it was just too easy of him as a task to get him down to where he can freeze him, and then Luke kept coming out. So Vader showed him different elements of the Force and how to move, and he showed him 3 levels. First was the fencing part. The actual arts of just going through the repetition, using skill with the lightsaber. Second, he showed him the Force. He used the Force. Didn't really throw anything, I mean, barely used his lightsaber. Except for to keep Luke occupied while he used the Force to move objects. To show him different levels. The third level, pure aggression, force, anger. Power. And came over the top of him to show him, you're beaten. And he kept fighting anyway. And because he kept fighting, he lost his hand. Now, normally we see someone lose their hand. That's it. That's a wrap. He's no longer going to be any good to go up against Darth Vader. It's like Darth Vader won. So when you see that, and you see Darth Vader has won, and you see Darth Vader has won, it's like, wow. This is not what I thought. We thought Luke was going to win because he's the good guy. And good guys always come out on top somehow. Vader has beaten Luke Skywalker. So this is not making any sense to us. We're like, what is this? And then all of a sudden, Han Solo is frozen in carbonite. He's taking away all this stuff that's going on at one time. Then the movie just ends. But this is space. Luke gets a new hand, a medical, like, robotic hand, and he's good to go. But man, they on the run again now. And it ends on such a dark note with that music. It just fades away. The movie, everybody's stunned. I mean, what was there to say? With everyone just completely out of their mind, stunned. The film ends, the people walk out. I swear it was like zombies. Everyone's creating, like, I wonder what's going to happen now. Because now you know there's going to be a third film. There got to be another. They can't end the film like this. And now people were just saying, like, this film wasn't like Star Wars. Star Wars is better because Star Wars had an ending. This did not have an ending. But what a great... I've enjoyed this movie. I gotta watch it again. It was the most rewatched movie probably at that time ever. People who saw Star Wars Empire Strikes Back had to keep going back because they couldn't believe what they saw. They enjoyed it so much, it opened up doors to all kind of possibilities. People was, man, they could go to other worlds, other planets. They could do this, they could do that. We need more Star Wars. And now we go to episode 6. Return of the Jedi. And at this time, it didn't even bother or faze anybody that this film was 4, 5, and 6. Nobody even cared. This is the third movie, and this is it. It's finally coming out. And I remember when the TV spot came on for Return of the Jedi. My uncle lost his mind. Completely lost his mind. My uncle got in there and saw that commercial and was like, we are going. And because it came out on a Friday at noon, first show, we got school. He snatched us out of school. He snatched me right out of school to take me up there to see that. Now, because of The Empire Strikes Back was such a success, the merchandising was even greater for the film. So with the merchandise being so great, it was pirated. And it was pirated so much, they lost millions to people pirating all this Chinese stuff coming out and fake toys that's breaking. And Star Wars was taking a blame for it because there were people who was complaining. Like the actual like mothers and stuff and all the complaints, and they're like, this is not our toys, these are knockoffs. And people were out on the streets selling Star Wars toys. And you could tell they weren't made the same. They didn't really look the same. But the fans had them anyway. They were cheaper, maybe by $1. And they were knockoffs. So, to defeat this, Lucas said he came up with a strategy. He came up with a fake name for the movie called Revenge of the Jedi. And they put that out everywhere to people, to snitches in county and anybody on the streets that would put it out. So the pirators can go and steal it. And sure enough, they stole the poster, Revenge of the Jedi. They had a fake trailer like made for it, put that out, and people started making, like, pirating it. over in China, they took it. This is the new Star Wars film, Revenge of the Jedi, and start putting their merchandise out. So when Lucas started putting out the original, he already had the original title and the original poster. And when they made the merchandise for Return of the Jedi, and then they announced that this is the movie Return of the Jedi, and you saw the real poster board behind it, then you knew what was the fake and what was the real. Now, if you saw Revenge of the Jedi, you knew you had the fake toys. You had Return of the Jedi. You knew you had the original Star Wars package. And it threw off the pirates because they lost. Nobody was buying the Revenge of the Jedi toys. Their production stopped and came to a halt. And they were like, "Oh my God, we got screwed in this." Sorry, it's my birthday. My sister's called. Sorry about that. When baby sis called, you gotta take it. Now, going to see this movie, that's the quest. My uncle gets off, boom, he told me that Thursday night, he said, what you got going on in school tomorrow? I'm nothing. Because I know where this is going. I'm nothing in the world at all. No test, no nothing. See, this is 83. I'm like, forget that. He was like, alright, well, I'm going to talk to your mom. I'm going to take him out of school tomorrow. I'm going to take him with me tomorrow to go see Star Wars. Yes. So I can't wait to get up and be ready. So I know we got to get there. The movie starts at noon. So, you know, for me to get up for school, normally Fridays I can get up no matter what. Because I'm anxious to get to school to get the day over with. So, now, you know, we got to get ready to go down and take the train and go downtown. See, back then, the trains cost, for anybody young that's listening to this, you're going to fall out of your chair, 50 cents. 25 cents to ride without a transfer. If you want a transfer, it was 50 cents. 2 quarters. 2 quarters, and you basically can ride. You get like 3 rides, I think, for 3 quarters. I mean, for the 50 cents. If not, you have to buy another transfer. So, we get down there, and my uncle is trying to rush. He's trying to run me through there. We're going through department stores for shortcuts. And who do we run into? The vice principal of the school. She wasn't at school today. She happened to be downtown doing some shopping for whatever the reason. Oh, and she was like, I'm like, Miss Span. If I had probably never said nothing and kept walking, we'd have been alright. But the first thing blabbed out of my mouth, because I'm just in shock of what are the odds, I said, Miss Span. And she's, what is he doing out of school today? And to see my uncle come up with some of the craziest stuff I've ever heard in my life. My uncle, oh, well, you know, his mom's, you know, she's been sick, and, you know, I wasn't nobody going to be there with him and all that stuff to take care of him. And none of this had a reason to do with why I wasn't in school. His mom was sick today, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to take him with me today and get him out downtown, you know, and we're going to just go over here to eat and all this stuff. Oh, woo, my God, he just kept it going and going and going. I'm like, gosh, let it go. So, we finally get through, we get to the movies, and everybody is in apparel. I mean, total apparel. It's Yoda crazy. Yoda became the hit ever since Empire now. So Yoda stuff is everywhere. Everybody got a Yoda mask, Yoda ears. It was crazy. But it wasn't as packed that it was going to be that night. And that's one of the main reasons you had to go, because people had to work. So now the movie starts. And when you're assessing the movie, it's going to be even a harder job to pull off now, because of the simple fact is you're trying to do something or replicate something that was done to perfection. So you're following perfection with the final part of the movie, in which people already kind of know where it's going. See, back then it wasn't like 4 or 5 movies. You did 3 acts and that was it. So in the 3rd act you knew, okay, this is the end. So people put it together like the rebellion's gonna win, Luke's gonna beat Darth Vader coming into the movie. So if that happens in the film, you're not that surprised. You're not that caught into it. It was no surprise there. So it took a hit, and as far as that point of view from like the fans, and they took the detraction towards it because of the facts that some of the things were laid out. But me assessing the movie now, I watched it then as a kid, and assessing it now as an adult and watching the film, when you actually can understand more of what was going on as far as the story, sound, and all that stuff, because as a kid you're not going to care. Now, watching this film, you've seen a tale of 2 sides here. Luke has grown in his powers, but he's still not a Jedi. Yoda's at the point where he's at the end of his lifespan. Years have passed in this since Empire and Jedi. Years have passed, and Han Solo has been on the wall in Jabba the Hutt's palace, and they had to try to get there. You starting to see like, wow, man, all of this stuff. You know, they got to rescue Han, to bring Han out of the hibernation sleep, and you starting to see how many years have actually taken effect. You know, it actually passed and went through. And as far as the dark side and what they're trying to accomplish, they're trying to build another Death Star. So what happened is the Emperor told him, forget your search for Skywalker right now. That's not important. What we need right here that's important is the fact that we need you to focus on building the new Death Star. That's your whole new quest. And so they found the location, and that's what they want to do. And now that it's on schedule to be complete, then he wants to continue his quest to find Skywalker. But this is the first time we get to actually see the Emperor. So when you see the Emperor for the first time, he comes off the ship and they're on the Death Star. You're like, whoa, what is this? You know, like, we get to actually see this Emperor, the guy that's behind Darth Vader, who we thought was the coldest person in the world when it came to Empire Strikes Back. So now you've seen, Luke's power. He's able to use the Force choke. This is the first time it's forbidden for Jedis to use the Force choke. Luke uses the Force choke when he goes to Jabba's palace to free everyone. And what you notice about Luke Skywalker in here, which become a common trait, what Yoda said, with Jedis becoming cocky and all of this, Luke, his powers has led to a bit of arrogance, which blinds him. And what happens is Luke doesn't see the trap door. He doesn't sense it with the Force because he's coming in there completely arrogant to the fact because he's so in belief of his power, the same way Anakin was when Anakin was in his in the earlier films. But without even having to say that, you could sense he has some dark side in him. You know, Jedis don't wear all black. Luke is wearing all black. He was basically headed down that path and didn't know it. He's in all black. He's not wearing like the Jedi traditional colors. He constructed his own lightsaber. But his powers are great. He has great athletic ability, great skills. But he wanted to go back to complete his training with Yoda, and Yoda said, "You know all that you need to survive or to beat Vader. You know everything about the Force that I can. There's nothing else I could teach you at this point. You know it all now. It's about will you apply it and do it." And what the Jedis wanted was for him to slay Vader, and then the Emperor. You know, to stop the Emperor, he's going to be the one to bring the balance to the Force. But to stop Vader was the key. And the only person that could do that was Luke. And he wanted Luke to pass on what he's learned, but he also told him a very key and important fact. Don't underestimate the powers of the Emperor. And it's something Luke did. Now, breaking down this film from this point on, when they bring in the Ewoks, and this is where Return of the Jedi got hurt as a story. I like the Ewoks. I was a kid. The Ewoks were fun. But they were kind of a distraction, another thing they brought in there, and they took the place of the rebellion. Instead of a lot of rebels running around, you got Ewoks running around. So it brought a whole other element to the table that a lot of people did not like, who were older fans, who were teenagers or in their 20s watching Return of the Jedi. They're like, we don't need these Muppets. What are these Muppets doing in the way? The attack with Lando and everybody else, it was done to perfection, because when they did the mission up top, it was a setup, it was a trap, and how the Emperor was the one that gave them the location, because he was so overconfident that they were going to be successful because he had foreseen it. But things change in the Force. And he saw everything he saw. He saw the rebellion get wiped out. They had the starship set up there. They had the Death Star fully operational, which can destroy ships. And Luke Skywalker had a plan to save his father, to redeem his father and get him back to the light, which is a great story. Like, this is very well written, because it's not rarely seen. You normally see the bad guy, who at this point we've come to know as Darth Vader. We normally see this guy get killed. We don't see this guy survive and turn to the... He turns a villainous character that everyone came to dislike and looked at as cold. He turned him into the hero of the whole movie. He stops the Emperor. And the fact that Return of the Jedi, what everyone thought was, that meant Luke Skywalker, the return of Luke Skywalker, which it wasn't. Because Luke was not a Jedi. Darth Vader was the Jedi. Anakin Skywalker. He came back to Anakin Skywalker. The return of the Jedi. And for many years, people did not even understand it. Even critics who wrote about the movie, who said, oh, this was great. And this was a great movie. It was a great, entertaining movie. I could watch Return of the Jedi. But what was missing from it was a lot of character from Han Solo. It was like he was on a no-show job. And that's why it took such a hit, because we've come to love Han Solo as a character. And here he was in love with Leia from the moment she broke him out. He wasn't the guy that you knew. He had grown as a character. He's aged. He's not the rebel that we knew him as. He's more in the, I'm in the rebellion, but he's still not scoundrelness for us. He was too caught up in Leia, jealous of Luke. It was like, I'm not going to get in the way of this. It was kind of not needed. It really wasn't. Then the whole, like, you're my sister, Leia, and Luke being told, and he betrays his feelings, and Darth Vader picks it up, led to Luke challenging, going into his inner self, channeling that anger, but able to retain it once he saw he was in the same position his father was, and he was headed down the same way. He looked at his hand and saw his father's hand is gone. The sins of the father passed on to the son, and now he's taking his place, and he's going down the road that doomed his father. So what he decided to do was switch everything around. And by that, meaning that this is where he put the stop to everything and said, you know what, I'm never going to join my father. And tosses his lightsaber away like an idiot. And when he did that, that opened the door for the Emperor to take him down, because he saw the Emperor as like some feeble old man. He underestimated the powers of the Emperor. And when he put them votes in Luke knew then, oh my God, what have I done? Young fool. Only at the end do you understand. Now you must pay for your lack of vision. Putting them votes in the Luke. I was sitting there saying, fry him, fry him, fry him. Because he needed to get fried. All that arrogance. Never throw away your weapon. But of course, Darth Vader comes back, helps him out, defends his son. The rebellion wins, and that's where we are today. Now let's get into episode 1. For the first time in 20 some odd years, we get another Star Wars movie in 1999. Going into this film, me, my best friend, and a couple other guys, we were getting ready to go and check out this film, and we were all excited that Star Wars was coming back. And my best friend, 2 weeks, I had bought the tickets already. And 2 weeks before the movie come out, he gets shot and killed. So I ended up getting other people to take his place for the tickets, but it was a very dark moment at that time, And I had to see his sister, who was in town, to finish out all the affairs that, he had back home, because they were from California. So it was a dim moment, but Star Wars was the only thing that kind of brightened things back up for us, because we both liked the movie. And his sister would have taken his place and went to the movies, but she had so many other things to do. But after the movie, we came and saw her and sat with her, and it was a great feeling just to see his sister and everything, and she was into Star Wars as well. So it made episode 1 more memorable. Especially for me. The line back then to get the tech, there was no Fandango. There was no buying anything online. So you had to run out and buy your tickets at the booth. And doing so, you had to wait in the line for days. They had people camped out there they had the person who was first in line, they had a tent. They was out there like almost 48 hours before tickets was about to be sold. So they sitting out there, got the guy in the tent, they all prepared. Like me, I thought it was something. I was just like, well, let me check and see how these tickets are. You know, I'm thinking I got time. I get there, I see the line, I'm like, what is this for? This is for Star Wars tickets. I said, okay, this is what I got to do. I got to get in here right now and get in this line. So waiting in line to get the tickets was an adventure in itself. I was unprepared like the other Star Wars fans. They had Star Wars nachos, Star Wars cereal in place, Star Wars fruit roll-ups. They had books and magazines. There was trivia in the line. They kept everybody. They was, oh man, you just out here? Oh, here you go. I'm like, my goodness, it's a Star Wars fruit roll-up. Yep. Had it since 83. I'm just kidding about that part, but yeah, they had trivia. They had everything we needed. Had a Star Wars blanket to keep you warm in the cold. But needless to say, here it is. The news is out there, everything. I got the Star Wars mask because all the print was done here in Northbrook, Illinois. And what I mean by the print is the fact that all the artwork, normally a major company would handle the production of that. But to cut down on theft and it being bootlegged, they used a smaller company that normally work with small short films. They've never handled something as vast as Star Wars, and all of it was going to be coming out of here, out of Northbrook, Illinois, which is 3 minutes from where I live. So this company was responsible for everything. George Lucas, one of his closest friends, is here. That's why they want to build the Chicago Star Wars Museum here. He's all into, like, he builds telescopes, and he actually went to Skywalker Ranch and built a telescope on George Lucas's house. And Lucas loved Chicago. You know, he always came here. So him coming to this guy's print shop, for them to run the entire print operation out of this place, small place in Northbrook, Illinois, this is where a lot of the pirating didn't happen that would normally happen in some of these bootleg films. So the bootleggers still did it, but they just had a later, response to stuff like that. They didn't normally have their big push and jump. But going through the procedures, going through the process of what you're going to normally see in a situation like this, meaning that, let's assess the film. Now, when the movie starts and we finally get to our seats, scratch all that. Now I was coming to get dressed up to go to the movies. Of course, I am Darth Maul, the most interesting character that's intriguing about Star Wars, because he's the really only character we know nothing about going into this. Everything else in prequels we pretty much knew. We knew Anakin, we knew who this guy was, we didn't know who Qui-Gon was. So we were interested to see these characters, but this new villain, You know, he was the guy before Darth Vader. So, who is he? You know, let's find out about Darth Maul. His artwork is interesting. Everything about him is, and it was the Star Wars magazine when they had just Darth Maul's face on the cover. You knew it was going down. I said, "Oh man, this is it. That's me. That's my character." I was dressed up as Darth Maul. I could work a bow really well, so working a bow was right up my alley. There's things to do. So as I got my bow, I'm working it, and I look like Darth Maul. I could do all the moves Darth Maul could do physically with the bow. I was in my physical prime at the time, so definitely I could do jumping, spins, working the blade. So I was just disarming people with my work, with my sword. So naturally, after I made the news, because the thing was, George Lucas had put it out that no one was to sell any Star Wars costumes to Episode 1 to after the movie was released. Once the movie's released, then you could release the sales. This store made a mistake and sold me the Darth Maul mask. And they weren't supposed to. But that person did not know it. It wasn't planned. It was a complete accident. They didn't know what a Darth Maul mask was, let alone what it could do or anything. They were completely in the dark about all of this. So once I had the costume, I was the only one with the Darth Maul mask at the time. Everybody else had to use paint and paint their face as Darth Maul because you couldn't get the mask. I was the only one with it. Now, let's assess the film. Going into the actual movie, Darth Maul was the shadowy character that I thought we would see a lot more of. And coming into this, the opening scene, everything about it was remarkable. You finally, for the first time, get to see a Jedi and what he could do at a young age when they've been trained and skilled and brought up to be Jedis. From infants, they have been brought up to be a Jedi. They was found in the Republic system, trained, schooled how to be Jedi. So you get to see what type of talents they have, and right away you saw right there on the droid ship. You're like, wow, because it's blowing your mind. Everybody's like shocked when they first run from the droid that calls. You're like, whoa, what was that? Because we never seen Jedis do all these things that they were able to do in this film. So with this being said and done, you know, you're intrigued, you're caught into it, and then entered Jar Jar Binks. And Jar Jar, we go meet some more characters in the planet Core, and they're trying to, it was an adventure just to get to the castle, so that they can go there and meet them and warn them of what's to come into the Naboo. And like the negotiations, and there wasn't a negotiations, and something's going on behind it. So a lot of the scenes with Jar Jar could have been cut out, but Jar Jar was the bridge to get them to the underwater. I understood that, and I understood what Lucas was facing at the time. But this isn't where the movie was bad. The movie's actually pretty good. It's very good at this point. You're getting character development. You're knowing what the story is, what's happening. You're kind of seeing what's happening with this Trade Federation, and you see that Lord Sidious, who's behind it, who's the Emperor, he's pulling the strings. So all of a sudden, you say, okay, I'm with this. Then all of a sudden it takes another turn. It goes in another direction. You're like, whoa, it just made another turn? It just made another sharp turn. So the turn it makes at that point is that the film, it goes from Queen Amidala, who we all knew as Natalie Portman, and we steadily seeing another lady as her who's like, wait, we thought Natalie Portman was playing her. They got two people playing the Queen? Because that is clearly not Natalie Portman. Now she's Padme? Well, she was just dressed up as the Queen earlier. So that get explained later on in the film. But it takes a turn from when they leave and they go to Tatooine to meet who did they go meet? They went to meet Anakin, and the whole thing with the pirates. Understood the element of bringing the kids in there. I felt Tatooine was a bit too long. That was one of the problems. And I felt that that's like a detraction as to what's been going on with the actual film, is that the editing, I felt, was just way out of place. Tatooine was way too long before Darth Maul intervened and got involved, and once he did, we didn't see enough of him, but it was a good enough tease. That fight over there in the sand where he was introduced to the Jedi for the first time. I understood they wanted to bring in the pod race. They have to make it entertaining for the kids, and they gotta make Jar Jar Binks do silly stuff so that the kids can be entertained. See, this was one of the problems that they were having with Star Wars by not being done in the time that they wanted to do it. The prequels was supposed to come out in 1988. George Lucas wanted to do that, and actually he had the stories really done back in 1988 for the backstory for 1, 2, and 3. But because of issues that they were having with, distribution and wanting to film them and get them out, he didn't want to go through the hassle of putting them out at that time. Now, here's another keynote to this, in this factor. All the people that were like my age, Star Wars fans was in their 20s. The one who were kids doing in the originals are now in their 20s. And some even older. They were teenagers when the originals are out. Now they're in their 30s and 40s, when they're out. So the kiddie stuff were annoying most of the 20-year-olds. And this was basically around the birth of when internet was starting to come into effect. It wasn't a major thing back then, but the internet was just like getting started. So, at this point, this is where the films start taking a dynamic towards, we got to try to make this for every genre, including the kids. Even though this is complex information that's going to be happening in this film, which is not going to be relatable to kids, and they're not going to pick it up to many years down the road. All this politics, and when they go from there to Coruscant, Tatooine that scene took so long that when they went to Coruscant, that should have been maybe trimmed down even longer. You took them from a very long scene in Tatooine, because you got to build the rapport with Anakin to get them to the pod race. So it was a very long scene, but it had a payoff at the end with Darth Maul being the end when they finally leave that planet and they bring Anakin with them. Coruscant was really drug out. really a lot of dense information that we really didn't need. A lot of it could have been explained and not shown. And that's why I think Lucas started to lose some of the fans, where in the first films a lot of things weren't explained. They were explained and you had to use your imagination to put it together. And sometimes when you tell little, it tells a lot. It's a lot more than feeling like you have to show everything. And that's where episode 1 seemed like they tried to show you everything. And it's no imagination to lead to, and you keep showing everything. So, needless to say, the movie is still a good movie. It's still a great movie. I can watch it any moment. I would have preferred to see Darth Maul do a lot more. But going back to Naboo, the fight scene, the stage, the strategic decision on her to go back to fight on her home planet, that stage, the strategy, everything was good. I had no problem with that whatsoever. The fight scenes that's going on is great. Putting Anakin in the ship and letting him go up there and fight right away as a kid and doing all the goofy stuff he was doing, not a problem. It's just that you got too much going on at one time. And that's a problem to follow. And this is the problem when stories, it's so much information to cover, you don't know how to make the battle. Like, they focus too much on Jar Jar at this time during the war scene and making Jar Jar a very important character in the movie. So that fight scene was made to be the distraction, should have been cut, and they should have put the focus on what was happening in the tower. That fight scene went way too long and drug out and wasn't as important anymore because their job was done. So why are we seeing Jar Jar fight a droid and stumble over stuff and stuff is happening for him? I understand you got to entertain the kids, but what you're doing is now you're ruining, it's causing the film to be ruined, because now you're entertaining two different entities. You got two different entities taking place now. Well, actually 4 instead of a usual 3 sets going on at one time, and 3. Now you got 4. You got 2 wars on the planet Naboo. You got what's happening in space with Anakin. Then you got the lightsaber scene. So it's like, well, what do you go to? So they click into 4 different areas. So you're taking the audience to 4 different circles, and they're like, well, I don't care what's going on out there with Tatooine. Like, I can care less about what's happening with them. They can jump in the lake. What's happening over there, not at Tatooine, but on Naboo, what's happening over there in the battlefield with the droids, that thing's over. Now, let's focus on the castle. Let's get that done. The Anakin scene in space is fine. And the lightsaber scene. You needed those 3 scenes only. Once they got the visory, you cut that out. Now you're down to 2 scenes. You got the lightsaber scene and you got what's going on out there with Anakin. So we didn't need to have these scenes go on and on and on throughout to the end. They drug on. Scenes needed to die off and not be seen anymore. Die off, not be seen anymore. Die off, not be seen anymore. Die off, not be seen anymore. Now, this is where the direction took a hit. This was the problem almost with Jedi. Han getting down the shield, the fight in space, and then the lightsaber scene, all drug on way too long. That getting his shield down took forever to do, which you needed that effect that they needed to go through an obstacle to get the shields down, but that took all day. But at least it was 3, it wasn't 4. So anyway, they come back. Darth Maul's dead. Everything's in place, and overall, everyone is satisfied with the lightsaber scene. It was the most fascinating lightsaber scene ever filmed, with Darth Maul and Qui-Gon Jinn and Anakin. With Obi-Wan Kenobi. We had never seen those type of skills ever displayed in a battle with Jedis and Sith. So, but naturally, it was incredible to watch. We had our setup for episode 2. Episode 2 is a remnants of everything we saw in The Empire Strikes Back. It's like George Lucas has said, I'm going to tell the same story, and I'm going to try to direct it the same way as Irwin did, and make the same movie. Instead of Han and Leia, you have Luke and not Luke, but you got Anakin and Padme. Now, going into this film, there was a lot of things being talked about, as far as now we're finally going to see a grown up Anakin in the movie. And at this time, people had trashed the kid that played Anakin, Jake Lloyd, to death. They had badgered him into almost submission. But this movie was going to have problems because this was the first digital movie ever filmed for a major scale. It's going to be some joker like, I made a digital movie before. This was the first digital movie of this scale ever. So what happened was, now that this digital film is on this scale and it's on this platform, a lot of movie theaters weren't equipped to put this on film. They're like, whoa, we have no way of putting this on film. In our theater, it can't be shown here, so we got to run it through a 35 millimeter here. Only certain movie theaters had the type of technology to do that. And fortunately, I was going to the one that had the projectors that could do that. Now they all have these projectors. Now you can go to any movie theater and get this projection. The digital film is nothing now. They can run it, no problem. So what happened was they tried to run it through a 35 millimeter projection. So all this great digital things we were supposed to see came fuzzy and blurry to some of the critics who watched the movie. So Star Wars was reviewed. It had bad reviews or mixed reviews at the time, because they said, well, all this stuff we were supposed to see with the digital, it came out blurry. And that was because the theater that they went to and premiered it at didn't have the right projector. So they had to do another review of the movie after the movie was released to come out to give it good ratings. They were like, oh, now we can give it good ratings because now we see some of the things that they were talking about. Nobody really focused on the story and how the direction and everything was. They were just caught into the moment of Star Wars. This is the most battered Star Wars movie of all time. Out of any Star Wars movie that has ever been bashed, Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, is it. Now, let's look at what's happening, what's wrong with it, and what took place. Now, what took place was this. As the story starts, they're trying to assassinate Queen Amidala, because her leadership or whatever, she's really the senator now. She's not like she's not the queen anymore. Her term is up. There's a new queen there. She did such a good job, they wanted her to stay. But there's a hit that's been placed out on her. Like, they want her removed. Because now she stays on now, she's in the Senate, so they wanted her pretty much removed from Senate. Because she stays in the way of interfering with certain things that they need to get done. So while trying to have her assassinated, the council choose to have selected a couple of prestigious Jedi's to come. Anakin, of course, and Obi-Wan Kenobi are assigned to be with her and guard her and like protect her. And at this point, Anakin is older. He's like about 20, maybe 17, might have been 17, 18. He never really go into his age, but it's obvious she's 5 years older than him. So now he's like, maybe let's say he's 20. It's probably been 10 years later. He's 20, she's 25. So now it makes more of a sense. And you never really buy the connection of the two, or the relationship between the two. And that was the problem in trying to illustrate the message that they were trying to build with the relationship and between the two. Coruscant and Cloud City basically look like the same place. But as you can see, it's not clicking. Like, there's no real connection. Sorry, my lady. He comes off as a weirdo and a spoiled brat more than someone. I think he had the wrong idea, or Lucas had the wrong direction in what he thought he was getting out of the actor. Because I don't know where the failed attempt is, but he came off as a brat instead of somebody who was ambitious, wanting to get there. He wanted to get there, but like in a bratty way. You know, like like I'm privileged. I'm supposed to be the Jedi. You know, like a brat. You know, I'm ready for the trial, and he's holding me back. You know, that's the tone you get from watching the acting performance of Hayden Christensen in this role. It doesn't come off as somebody who's like determined or ambitious to get something. And there's a way to be ambitious without coming off as a brat about it. So I don't know if it's the writing that was bad in doing that setup, and then it makes Natalie Portman look bad. She almost couldn't get movie roles because of the fact that people didn't think she could act. They said, well, maybe she's not that strong of an actress, because they were judging her off Star Wars, which was, she was trying to be the character that they wanted her to be. And this is like what George Lucas requested of her. And to be like this, like, robotic person with no feelings. And she keeps her feelings guarded, so she was coming off more like a robot. Chancellor, we will not be, you know, it's like, she was like an android. So if it came out she was an android, it wouldn't have surprised me in the film. Then they go to these scenes back on the planet, her home planet, and they have like the scene where they kiss. And I said, oh wow. Okay, they're on her home planet, they're kissing, and it's just not the same. The setup, it's like 3 different setups, and it's too much around trying to build a relationship between the two to where she falls in love with him. I'm like, he hasn't done anything for her to fall in love with him. Or if she's feeling it just because they were playing together in a field and he can float some fruit to her fork. I mean, if she ain't impressed by that by now, then you know, the initial attraction is there. That's why she was wearing the slutty get-up. And she took him to the crib so they could be alone out there. And I'm like, look, episode 2, I could care less about all that build-up. I want to see action. And I felt that the movie kind of drug on. And then you got Obi-Wan, who's investigating the actual plot of the movie, which is the development of this clone army. And I thought they did a great job in telling that portion or how it was disguised from the Jedi Order. It was deleted. I like the fact that more things were deleted, or I mean that they could have detracted a little bit more from the Anakin story, that fake love story, to come back to this. This is where the story was, and with Obi-Wan doing the investigation about the clone army and finding Jango Fett, the bounty hunter. We want to know more about Jango Fett and find out what's going on over there. So with all of this happening and intertwining with one another, we get lost into this fake love story, and all of a sudden they got to travel there to go to his home planet to save his mom, who's dying, where he wipes out the entire Sand people, the entire population. He wipes them all out, and then he feels the remorse after it's done, and he comes off again as a brat. And because of all of this sympathy and sadness, she falls for him. And now she's, oh, I love you, once they get caught on another planet that plays like a video game. I mean, C-3PO, he's in pieces in this film during the Clone Wars. He's in pieces in Empire Strikes Back. So they put him in pieces in this one. Queen Amidala, or Senator Amidala, she's in white, just like Leia. Her mother was in white. In the other film, they put them in the battle arena. So they're all battling. They actually had a scene where she's shooting at Dooku's ship, and that looked like Leia when Leia was shooting at Boba Fett's ship when he's speeding off with Han. I mean, it's a lot of comparisons to Empire Strikes Back, but it just fails in comparison because you don't care about a lot of anything that's going on in the film. The Jedi battle, fighting all the droids, with the attack of the Clone Wars and the start of it, this is where it was starting to get good, and we're like, okay, we're going to see some things happen here. We're going to see Dooku in action. We're going to see this. We see a bunch of Jedi fighting a bunch of droids, and then the clones show up, and they fight all the droids. So the Jedi's fought for maybe 10, 15 minutes, and here come the clones. The clones are in there fighting now. So this starts a whole new war, and then that was visually good. Then here comes the lightsaber fight that normally redeems the film, is the climax, the epic sword fight that ends everything, the epic duel. They get in there. Obi-Wan's fight scene, this is like the worst choreographed fight scene I've probably seen since Star Wars starts, with Christopher Lee. And him and Obi-Wan, I thought that one was bad. Not only was that bad, the Anakin sword fight scene, when he threw him the two lightsabers, I'm like, oh man, we're finna see some action here with him and the Count Dooku. And sure enough, that gets wiped out because Anakin, he cuts the sword gets broken in half. Everything is close-up shots, aerial shots of sword fighting in the dark, kind of like Empire Strikes Back. They tried to do close-up shots, and they're doing close-up. You just seeing lights. Then they back away. Then you see one shot where he cuts his arm off and he throws him to the side, and I'm like, we just got chipped. And my cousin was with me, was livid, because he felt like, that's it? That's all we gonna see between Dooku and him? And then Dooku's exhausted. It's like, for what? You didn't really do nothing. Then after it was done, here comes Yoda. Yoda comes in, and then this lightsaber scene was epic. The whole movie theater stood up and clapped because of the simple fact Yoda was actually the first time we saw Yoda with the lightsaber and get to see what he could do. So this saved the movie for everybody, and it was great. It was a great scene to see, but you could tell This is the only thing they wanted to prepare for. Well, I felt we could have had a little bit more of a fight scene, a little bit more better choreographed scene with Obi-Wan and Anakin. Besides just making them like sideshow dummies. I mean, if Obi-Wan is so bad, how is he going to be able to contend with Anakin? He couldn't even hang with Dooku. And he's supposed to be trained by Qui-Gon Jinn, the guy who Dooku trained. And he can't even last 10 seconds with Dooku. So they take her back to Naboo, the queen, after everything is gone. Yoda wins and Dooku flees, but the Clone Wars started and the dark side is in business now. Everything is moving the way they planned. And we go to episode 3, the final chapter, Revenge of the Sith. We all knew that the dark side was going to be the ones to come out on top at the end of this because we've seen the other 3 films. So, how they get into power? Well, we know they got the clones under control because we've seen it now, and there the clones are. They are totally in control. And now that the clones are running things out there, they're helping the Republic, the Jedi. More and more control is being given to Senator Palpatine, his power. No one knows he is the Dark Lord of the Sith. Well, we all know because we followed the story. But to see how no one in the film knows, including the Jedis, was remarkable. Now, going to see this film, of course, everybody by now is prepared. Me, I'm Darth Vader, of course. I have on my outfit. I'm ready to go. And back then, you know, it was the midnight shows. This is only 10 years ago. It's the midnight shows. You know, waiting long lines for tickets. You can get your tickets faster now. Internet is pumping. But right across the street is a bar called the Cubby Bear. And everybody got drunk. Except for me. Everybody else got drunk out of their mind because they wanted to get ready for the movie. So the movie didn't start at midnight, so they was drinking to about midnight. So by the time they came up there, you got drunk guys with lightsabers trying to fight me. And I'm just disarming people. Dude's like, oh, Vader got me! You know, they're blasted. And this guy's out here with Yoda ears on, a Darth Vader sword. You know, he's all out of place. I'm like, this guy I don't think he knows what he's doing. So, I'm just disarming people with lightsaber skills and taking them all apart. So, we're having a blast during this whole Star Wars event. Then, all of a sudden, the movie gets ready to start off. We're all in position. And while we're all in position, getting ready, and we're epically waiting for this movie to start, the Star Wars thing go up, and everybody's screaming like this has been promoted as the last one. The movie starts off right away where they kidnap Palpatine, and the Jedi's got to rescue him. And this is it. We're going to see where this film goes. And from the beginning, you see in the battle, General Grievous. You want to get to see more about this Grievous character. And you're seeing him and the General, and he's doing all this controlling. And now it's like it's too many villains right now, so they got to start to thin things out. So Count Dooku had to get wrapped up right away. So they go into a duel fight with Dooku, and right away the fight is not believable. So the Count Dooku, he could have been totally removed from the film, and they could have it wouldn't have put a budge in anything. Count Dooku shows up. I love the way his sword was designed, but still, he disarms Anakin. I mean, he's fighting both of them. He knocks one out of the way. He gets rid of Obi-Wan Kenobi, breaks something down and throws him down and treats him like dirt once again. So it's just him and Anakin now. And now that it's him and Anakin, Anakin is sitting there dual fighting with Dooku, and Dooku can't do anything with him. He's too strong, he's too powerful for Count Dooku. Beats Dooku within minutes. Obi-Wan can't stand in 2 minutes with Dooku. Anakin can destroy this guy. Disarms him, cuts both of his hands off, then chops his head off. Now the Emperor gave him permission to do it. They're trying to flee. They run into General Grievous. They couldn't kill Grievous. They leave. And now the Emperor knows he's going to be working more and more with Anakin. And he feels he's going to be his apprentice. And how he knows this at this time, no one really knows. So they're going down this avenue with Anakin, that you could feel that, okay, something's here that's going to cook and probably bridge the two together. And you don't know what, but you're waiting for the moment. So you're seeing the developments on how he's manipulating the Jedi by telling he want to give all special privileges to Anakin, and the Jedi are so privileged, how is he having all this power? They don't like Palpatine anymore. They felt he should have been out of his position, and as soon as this war is over, we can get him out of there. He got to return power, and he's got to leave. That's what they want. So they want to end the war quick, and so that they can have no more resistance. So Count Grievous got away, so they wanted to go get Grievous. They had to go find his location. So he tells Anakin about it, so that Anakin can go and be the one to present it to the Jedi. He knows the Jedi Council won't select him if he says, I am suggesting that you go. And so the Council is definitely not going to send him out there on a mission to do it by himself, no matter what his skills are, just because the Senate is close to him, and he knows it. So he's going to make him feel alienated so that he can come over to him, which is smart. I had no problems with this movie. It's only when it got to certain scenes that I felt that we should have drawn things out more. This movie, by the scopes, the scale, Mustafar, the lava planet, the sword fight with him and Obi-Wan, epic, best fight scene in Star Wars history that we've seen to this date. And this is what's shocking to me, is that Anakin and Obi-Wan can stand up to Anakin. But you couldn't last 2 minutes with Dooku. That's why it just was bizarre to me. Sure, he taught Anakin everything he knows, but clearly Anakin is the more superior when it comes to power and certain skills of the Force. So Anakin's own arrogance beats him in the battle, which was another good thing they did. I just would have liked to see more of Anakin once he became Darth Vader, transform and do something in the suit besides go, no, like a whiny girl, and then walks right behind the Emperor. It just, a total wasted opportunity. Wasted opportunity to see something with Vader. You know, it just, because we got to go from that to where episode 4 is, which means that we still a large gap. Luke and Leia, they're babies. So there's about 20 years missing. What did Vader do in those 20 years? You know, that's what we were missing out on in the film. I felt that they should have focused more on that, but the fight scene with Yoda and the Emperor was perfection. We got a lot of questions answered there. I mean, it was drawn out perfectly. A lot of things they couldn't show in the tower because of kids and Star Wars wanted to watch their rating. But I wish they would have showed more when he went to the Jedi Temple of how he walked in there and took it over. You know, they tried to show you more on the video game. And in the book, it's amazing the things that he did in there. Using his force and how he defeated him. That would have been epic to show in the film. You know, but it was played out in the game, and you got to see how he took out the lady who runs the archives and everything else. He lifted her up with the force and brought her towards him, towards his lightsaber. That was brutal. I'm like, my goodness. I mean, a lot of stuff happened in the book, but it only played out in the video game. And if you saw the game, when he took the statue, the big statue in front of the Jedi Tower, it broke, and he caught one piece, and he turned it and threw it like a weapon right through the wall. That could have been used in the film. When he went and took out the Jedi Tower, all the Jedis in the Jedi Council, and he was slicing them and taking them down, those things needed to be seen. Of course, you can't show him killing the young ones. You know, that just had to have been edited, or the way they did it. But at least that, we would have had some scale of how powerful his dissension into the dark side. He was just basically like, okay, I'll join. And then the sword fighting scene, I would have kind of had a double in there instead of letting, you know, like Darth Sidious actually do his own fight scenes. I mean, because that just looked kind of ridiculous at the point. He's a much better actor than he is a Sith fighting. So, and that was it. At the end of it, the Empire became a galactic empire. The Republic became a galactic empire, where there'll be the rule instead of the Senate. They'll become one big gigantic Senate where they dictate everything in the galaxy. And that's what happened. And democracy died for 30 years. Oh man, this has gone way too long. But at the end of this, anybody who stayed to the end, thank you for staying to the end. And I just wanted to say something else. After the film is over, it's 3 in the morning. We get outside. They found the Anakin Skywalker guy to fight me. Where they find this guy, I have no idea. But to that guy, thank you for the challenge. I might see you again. 5 more days. And my birthday concludes. I'm out.